spiders? Creepy, scary little monsters, or... No, that's it, that's what they are. I mean, just look at these things. How can you possibly see something like this and not just go... Yeah, spiders are just horrifying, and I'm clearly not the only one who thinks so. Why else would they be featured so heavily in just about every horror thing ever made? Hell, even if you just want a bit of the horror aesthetic, you just need to sprinkle in a few of these 8-legged beasts and hey presto, job's a good'un. They really are just the absolute creepiest things. So what if we gave them weapons? Well, that's apparently what Boss Game Studios wanted to find out when they decided that what we all wanted, what we needed, was a slightly different kind of gaming protagonist, namely a spider. Not just any spider though, but a mind-controlled cybernetic spider with interchangeable miniature weapons for limbs. Yeah, this is a bit of a weird one. Hi, I'm Atticloaf, and this is Spider, the video game. First things first, that title. Yes, this game could easily be referred to as just Spider, that is what it says on the spine after all, but the full title, according to the front cover and even the title screen, is actually Spider the video game. Yeah, wouldn't want to confuse it with Spider the series or Spider the musical, would we? Either way, the game is at least aptly named considering it is indeed all about a spider. Kind of. You see, the eponymous spider here isn't actually a spider at all, it's in fact some kind of mini robot thing controlled by some unnamed scientist.
My what?
Allow me to explain. As the game begins, we see a scientist working on a rather strange bit of tech in his lab, a cybernetic spider. The scientist is also wearing some kind of headband that seems to be connected to said spider in some way or another. As his tinkering continues though, it appears this scientist is being observed through the lab's cameras by someone very intrigued by his work.
I want that technology.
Next thing you know, the lab gets raided as the scientist gets injured and dragged off by the assailants, but as he's still wearing the headband, it seems he's still able to take control of his little spider. Somehow. I think the implication is that he basically uploaded his mind into the spider, but he might also just be controlling it semi-consciously. It's a bit unclear. What is clear is that the scientist spider now has to chase down these intruders and get his body back, all while fighting off hordes of other bugs and creepy crawlies also released during the commotion. Not entirely sure how they reach seemingly every corner of the entire city before the spider even gets out of the lab, or why they would all be hostile, but them's the breaks I suppose. As far as setups go though, I'd still say this is a pretty decent, if rather weird one. It's not really all that important in the long run though, as it's more or less just a framework for the actual game, which in essence is pretty much just a standard 2.5D platformer. At least at first glance. You see, while this game might be fairly similar to other platformers of this type, it still has a few rather unique tricks up its sleeve. After all, you are playing as a spider, which for one thing means your options for traversal are far less restrictive. I mean, you can literally climb the walls. And ceilings! That's right, being an arachnid means you aren't restricted to just walking on the ground, and luckily, several levels and areas are purposely designed with this in mind. Not only can you utilize all four sides of certain ledges and the like to hide from and or get a drop on enemies, but you'll also have to think a little bit outside the box if you want to find all the exits in all the levels. Yeah, most levels actually have more than one exit, and while I don't think you have to find all of them to complete the game, I'm fairly certain you do need to find a few more than the bare minimum. Most of these exits aren't too difficult to reach though, so I'd say they're definitely worth the effort, at least usually. How exactly does this game work though? I mean, what do you actually do and how is it all structured? Well, as you might expect, it's all split up into individual levels, 22 of them to be exact, spread across 6 worlds or sections, namely the laboratory, the factory, the city, the museum, the sewer, and the evil labs. Gee, I wonder what they do there.
Evil, I tells ya! Evil! Evil!
Within each section, you have to collect a certain number of microchips to advance, all of which are contained within the level exits. Basically, make your way to the exits and avoid or kill any obstacle or enemies in your path. Pretty standard fare. If you consider a spider going around shooting wasps and snails with the missile launchers attached to its legs, standard. You see, this is, as mentioned, no ordinary spider, and as such, neither are its attacks. Sure, the standard little lunge-looking thing seems fairly normal, until you realize that even this is done with a knife. Yeah, this spider is so bad, it's basically brandishing a shiv.
Hey man, I cut you up so bad, you're gonna wish I don't cut you up so bad.
This is far from the only weapon in this spider's arsenal though, but it is the only one that remains permanent. The rest are basically upgrades found scattered throughout the levels, and if you run out of ammo or die, you lose whatever you collected and go back to just a knife again. Fair enough, you might say, there should be penalties for failing after all, but I say it's already more than enough that dying also means you have to redo the entire level. That's right, this game does not have a single checkpoint anywhere in any of the levels. Granted, the levels aren't really all that massive, as most can be completed in, I'd say, anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, give or take, but a lot of them end up feeling much, much longer, as you only get 2 hits before you die and have to start them all over again, without any power-ups.
See, now that's some bullshit.
Tell me about it. I mean, it's one thing to have penalties, but why even have a life system if losing a life and getting a game over results in pretty much the same thing? The only difference, really, is that getting a game over features an extra loading screen or two, but as long as you've remembered to save your game, the effect is exactly the same. In other words, this game's life system is absolutely and entirely pointless. This in turn also makes one of the more prevalent pickups in the game, namely the DNA strands, a complete waste as well. Don't get me wrong, I still tried to get as many as I could because, well, it's a collectible and I have a problem, but from a purely logical standpoint, they serve no practical purpose. All they do is give you an extra life per 100 you collect, but if there's no real benefit to having extra lives in the first place, why even bother? They really didn't think this through, did they? It is still more than possible to get through each level though, especially considering the aforementioned weapon upgrades you can collect. In addition to the standard slash attack, you can also get a boomerang, a poisoner, a flamethrower, an electro beam, 3 different kinds of mines or bombs, and of course, homing missiles.
You think that'd be enough?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but as cool and fun as all this is, I can't be the only one who feels this is a bit silly. You're literally strapping bombs and missiles to a damn spider, and for what? Fighting off a bunch of crickets, wasps, snails, and other spiders. Sure, they're technically robots or some such, but we're still talking about bugs, and I don't know about you, but my go-to method for handling those has never been hardcore explosives. Wouldn't mind the flamethrower though. As already mentioned, none of these upgrades or power-ups are actually permanent, but some do last quite a bit longer than others. Most of them do only have a certain amount of ammo before they run out and disappear, but the boomerang actually never runs out. You can still lose it by dying though, or by switching it out with a different weapon. You see, you can't just equip whatever you collect whenever you want, as you're restricted to 2 offensive front-mounted weapons and 2 defensive rear-mounted ones. As only one of each can actually be utilized at once though, you also have to select your preferred weapons using R and L1, and if the weapon slots are already filled when you collect something new, the one not currently selected will be replaced. In essence, if you don't want to lose a weapon by accident, make sure it's activated before picking up a new one. Now, all of these weapons are pretty neat in their own ways, but some are definitely more useful than others. The boomerang is one of my personal favorites, considering it doesn't use ammo and can deal with enemies from a distance, but it's not quite as helpful as the homing missiles. Why? Well, the clue is kind of in the name. They're homing missiles, meaning they literally lock on and home in on enemies from pretty much any angle, and more often than not, they also kill in 1 or 2 hits. Guess that's why they don't really last all that long. Yeah, as good as they are, you actually only get 3 missiles for every one of these pickups. This effectively means that they run out almost as quickly as you get them, unless you decide to save them for a specific enemy, at which point they're kinda useless until then anyway. The actual homing is also kinda wonky, as I swear it sometimes just doesn't want to work, meaning the missiles are genuinely a complete waste at times. As far as waste goes though, the missiles are still far better than any of the remaining weapons. Okay, so the mine/bombs are pretty decent, but for some reason I just didn't end up using them all that much, especially not the standard stationary ones. Oh, they work, they're just not as interesting or convenient to use, IMHO. The flamethrower is also pretty good, but unfortunately it just runs out far too quickly. You don't seem to ever get more than a couple of sprays out of it before it's empty, and it's much the same with the poisoner, only with the added drawback of being even less effective, at least seemingly. Still, neither of these options are anywhere near as useless as the so-called electro beam. I'm so not kidding, this thing is absolutely pointless. Oh, it can take down enemies, and it is kinda cool, but I swear you have to all but empty the thing for even the smallest of enemies. The only real benefit it has is that it can hit enemies from above, below, or at angles, but again, it's essentially a one-hit wonder. Or rather, one-hit blunder.
Bravo.
You do have a few other pickups as well, but most of them just don't matter. The only real exceptions are these shields that briefly protect you from various hazards, allowing you to reach new areas and secrets, but everything else is just useless. Apart from the previously mentioned DNA strands, there's the occasional extra life you won't really need, the very, very occasional health pickup only ever equating to 1 health point as you never get more than 2 anyway, and finally, there's the CD pieces that I didn't even realize did anything at all. I'm not kidding, they do an absolutely atrocious job of explaining the purpose of these CD pieces in that they just don't bother, at least not in the actual game. You see, there is in fact an explanation of what these things actually do, but unfortunately, it's only in the game's manual. I know, this is just how some older games handled certain things, and I am one of those people that if anything actually kind of missed the days of manuals and such, but even back when they were a thing, you still didn't really need the manual if the game was designed properly. A good game still tells you everything you need to know through its gameplay or menus, as the manual is just there for further details or hints and tips and so on. A manual should be supplemental, not mandatory. In this case though, you'd be hard pressed to figure out what the CD pieces actually do without reading the manual. I guess there are some minor hints, kind of, and I freely admit that it is my own damn fault for not figuring this out sooner, but I still say it's far, far from obvious. You see, these CD pieces actually unlock the bonus levels. That's right, I said bonus levels. I honestly didn't even realize that there were bonus levels in this game until after I finished it, as I apparently only unlocked one, namely the 70s room. As this didn't feel much like a bonus stage though, what with it still having enemies and not that many actual bonuses or whatnot, I genuinely thought it was just another level, so no, I really didn't understand the point of the CD pieces.
Well, I'm an idiot.
Apart from that though, the only other things you'll find in the levels are the enemies, which, as mentioned, mainly consist of various other bugs and creepy crawlies. Most of them aren't that difficult to deal with, as they usually have fairly simplistic movement and attack patterns, but there are a few exceptions. Mainly cheap ones. Okay, that may be a bit unfair, but it does feel like this game's main way of making enemies into an actual challenge is to spawn them just outside the visible area of the screen and have them fire projectiles that are all but guaranteed to hit you considering, you literally can't see them coming. I swear I eventually ended up just inching my way through most levels, as I knew some bugger or another was gonna pop in out of nowhere to frag me if I wasn't careful, and I'm sorry, that just doesn't make for a very enjoyable experience. Whenever that sort of thing is less prevalent though, things quickly become more enjoyable, if a tad too easy. Oh, it's still more than possible to fudge up by misjudging a jump or getting overconfident against an enemy or some such, but for the most part, it's not too bad. Unless you run into one of the bombing bats or shooting scorpions without any homing missiles. As you might expect though, you don't just go up against all these creepy crawlies and various vermin, you do get a few boss fights as well. More specifically, you get a whole 3 of them. Yup, just 3. Not one per section or anything like that, just 3. These better be effing fantastic. Sadly, they're not really. Or they're definitely something, at least 2 of them are, but fantastic is probably a bit of a stretch. Hell, the first one is just some spinning robotic arm, that's it. All it does is try and sweep your legs or occasionally toss bombs at you, and while it can be a bit difficult to determine exactly where those bombs will land, it's really not a very difficult battle. In fact, it's stupidly easy. The second boss isn't that bad either once you learn the pattern, but it's certainly a much more interesting one. Taking place in a museum, you might have several ideas as to what you could be going up against, but I seriously doubt that anyone would guess that you're actually going up against this.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Then there's the final boss, and I suppose I have to give a bit of a spoiler warning here. After all, this is where the true identity of the main villain is finally revealed, so if you really don't want to know, look away now. You see, it turns out that the big bad of this entire thing isn't actually a person at all, just part of one. What part? Well,
I'm a gigantic brain!
That's right, it's a brain. A sentient brain with a prehensile brainstem and laser beam eyes that is also able to speak somehow, even though it has no mouth. Guess it's telepathic or something, I don't know. Regardless, it does make for a decent enough boss fight, even though it technically kills itself, as you just trick it into grabbing a bit too much electricity, eventually causing it to melt. Talk about frying your brain. Ultimately though, it is kind of a letdown that these are the only 3 bosses in the entire game. Granted, it isn't that big of a game to begin with, and when this thing is one of the few ideas you can actually come up with, maybe it's for the best that we don't get too many more, but I'd still have erred on the side of 1 per section or some such. This just feels a bit lacking. All things considered, I'd still say this is a pretty good package overall though. The levels are usually very well and somewhat cleverly designed, the weapons are all pretty fun, ineffective though they may be, and the music is just fantastic. Seriously, look up the soundtrack, it's an absolute banger! Sure, there are problems here, some more glaring than others, but for this kind of thing, what we get is more than acceptable. Yeah, it is a pretty short game, only taking around 8 to 10 hours at most, and trust me, several of those hours can be a true test of patience and anger management, but at no point while playing it did I ever really feel like I was wasting my time, except in a good way. If you like platformers but are looking for something a little bit different, I'd say this is definitely worth a look. Yeah, there are better games, even just within the genre, but very few are quite as memorable and distinct. If nothing else, it's certainly a very interesting experience. And now, to play us out, I present to you an excerpt from the world-famous Spider the Musical. Enjoy, and thanks for watching.
Itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Used some homing missiles to have a big shootout. Laid down some mines and blew some innards out. This itsy bitsy spider just doesn't mess about. Oh no, it really doesn't. You better stay away if you know what's good for you. Woo-hoo.
Thanks for checking out the video. If you liked what you saw and want to support the show, then please like, comment, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if you want to go the extra mile, then please consider subscribing to my Patreon, becoming a member here on YouTube, buying me a coffee, or sending me a super thanks or PayPal donation. Any and all amounts will be greatly appreciated, but whether you donate or not, I still want to thank you so much again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.